All righty, guys. We sorry I've been holding everybody up this morning. That's all my fault. I was going to try and get Gamble in with us, but we've been having issues with him. So Mr. Terry is being just a great guy, and he's going to blow our minds. He's going to have a special show and tell. Before I hand it over, this is a happy belated birthday to all of the Green Berets out there. The Green Berets were activated June 19th, 1952. So happy belated birthday to all of our Green Berets and the Special Forces. So without further ado, guys, I'm not going to hold up anything else. I'm going to go ahead and hand it to Mr. Terry and let him get it going.
Good morning, guys. It doesn't look like there's a whole lot of guys on yet, but hopefully that'll change. Bud and I have been talking about what to do. We talked with Jason Holmes over the weekend. What do you guys want to hear about? What do you want to see? Whatever. So I think what we're going to do is start off with a little show and tell just to kind of get it out of the way, because I got all this shit sitting here on the couch. And, first thing is, a few years ago, I was on this hog hunt, and I took my 223, and one of the guys that sponsored the hunt does this, what they call hydro dipping. So we got to talking, and I said, I'd really love to have one of my ARs hydro dipped with the Vietnam era tiger stripe pattern. So he took about a month, and he came back and he said, this is the best I can do, but this is what he ended up with. And it's pretty badass.
Wow.
I love it. I love it. Oh, the fucking dogs. I'll do a shameless plug for my passion. Not too many guys know I'm a saddle maker, leather worker, whatever. And one of the things I do each year is I make holsters and shoulder holsters that I donate to the Special Forces groups for their fundraisers. And I'm going to try to get it okay. I think you can see in that pattern, you see the little arrowheads. A friend had a stamp made for me that is the arrowhead that's on the shoulder patch, the Special Forces arrowhead. And he had that made for me. And so when I do the fundraiser, since it's for SF guys and families, I use that stamp, and it is directed specifically for SF guys. Getting on with the real show and tell stuff. This is a North Vietnamese canteen. As you can see, it's very basic. It's a plastic canteen. It's colored it was probably originally kind of a yellowish, or it might have even been clear. I think it was probably yellow colored. It's kind of a brownish yellow now. Of course, it's 50 some years old. And just some real thin nylon straps for carrying it, and then
that's so amazing.
But this is what I was telling you about. If you look, this is a ammo carrier for an SKS. That's why it's so small, because the SKS didn't have the big long magazines. But you see on the ends all the burn marks and stuff.
Oh.
I picked this up after a bomb damage assessment that we did. One of the comments that came up in one of our previous deals had to do with that, talking about tunnels and bomb damage assessments and all that. So let me tell you, they tell us that there's going to be this massive B-52 arc light on a regimental base camp area. And then they're going to send our company in to get our asses kicked. And of course, that's exactly what happened. but they put us on the ground. The dust had literally not settled all the way to the ground yet. That's how fast they put us in. We found tunnels and bunkers with steaming hot rice still on the tables, campfires that were still burning, all kinds of stuff like that. So we caught them at breakfast time, and it didn't take them more than a couple of hours before they started. Here's a company, 105 men, and we're in a regimental base camp area. So a regiment is, a couple of thousand guys. My wife tells me I got to quit moving around so much, so I'll try to sit still.
You're fine, sir. You're fine.
So, I guess where I was going with this is these guys were masters, and I mean masters at building tunnels and bunkers. I mean, there's cases where they found underground complete hospitals, complete with air conditioning and generators and all that stuff. So to put us in after the arc light is all well and good. The problem is when they build these tunnels, these things were reinforced, and I don't care how many 500-pound bombs you drop, you're not going to blow them up because they're underground. So you blow a bunch of holes, you knock down a bunch of trees and all that kind of stuff, and then you get your ass kicked. So, I mean, it is what it is. And, of course, the idea, we report back, well, we blew up a bunch of trees, but that's about it. Okay, well, then maybe these arc lights aren't as great as they might be thought to be. Let's see, next toy. Oh, and we forgot to mention at the very beginning, Bud was going to mention, we think that maybe once we get deeper into this, when I get done with the show and tell, we've kind of got a loose outline of some key things that we're going to talk about, like, for instance, the trail. We think it might be easier is as we do each subject, if you've got questions, get them in right away, and we'll try to answer them while we're still on that subject. I don't know, we think it might go better. So when I got ready to come home after my first tour, my yards really didn't believe that I was coming back. And so they gave me this pipe.
Oh my God.
The end of it's missing. The part you'd put, there was a end section, and somewhere over the 50 years of moving and whatever, it's gone. But it's something that I treasure because it came from my yards. I just love my yards. So here's
that pipe is amazing, sir. Thank you for showing this. I'm getting all kind of comments right now.
Yeah. The pipe to me is even more priceless than all the bracelets. And I had an arm full of the bracelets, and unfortunately, a few years ago, in a weak moment, I sold a bunch of my stuff to a collector. It is being preserved and what have you, but sometimes I look back on it and I kind of wish I would have kept some of that stuff. The ones that have listened to my first, I guess it was the first one we did, and I talked about when I got shot the first time, and I had the rifle, and the rifle that I got shot with, he looked at it and threw it down before he could fire a second shot. And come to find out, the reason was because my first shot before my rifle jammed was my bullet hit the bolt of his SKS. So here, the 4 bullets at the top are the last remaining bullets out of his rifle. So it's like, how many guys have the bullets out of the gun they got shot with? Then the two pieces below it are pieces of an 82 millimeter mortar round. When I was at Leghorn in December of '69, they were hitting us every day. And I was on a rock ledge, and it landed right behind me, knocked me on my ass, ruptured my eardrums, and I never got a scratch. Then there's two pieces of probably a 200 or 250 pound bomb. I was working airstrikes, danger close, and the one on the right I picked out of the ground right next to my thigh. That's how close we were working it. And then the very bottom piece, you see all the serrations in it, and that's so that the fragments would break apart. That's a big piece of a 122 millimeter rocket. And, you know, you can imagine getting hit by something like that. Somebody asked a question about what kind of wood was it made out of, the pipe was made out of. I don't know. You can tell that it's a real soft kind of wood, but I don't know. And then the stem is bamboo. I can tell that. And then there's all these little metal bands around it to hold it together. But the wooden, I don't know.
Was the pipe, was this a special piece not to be used, or would y'all smoke the tobacco out of it for get-togethers and such?
When I drank the Village Chieftain under the table down outside of camp, he broke out a pipe kind of like this, and I never did do dope, so I'm not going to say what was in it because I don't know. It was some kind of tobacco, but it was used. And this one, even though it was a gift, you can, I don't know, you can kind of see it's very crudely made. And so if I blow on it, it comes out the end. Down in the Village, they used a lot of pipes that were small pipes, just, you know, little pipes. But let's see, I think that's it for my show and tell. What was a Viet Cong loadout? It varied, obviously, just like with us. It would vary. What I'll call a typical loadout. Now, like for instance, the ammo pouch for an SKS. Not every one of these bad guys carried an AK. I think they had the same issues that we had with supply and demand. And so, for instance, that guy carried a canteen, obviously, his bandolier of magazines for his AK. He'd have a pistol belt that had a few pouches and stuff on it. And then he had a rucksack if they were on the march. Now, if they were coming after us specifically, they were coming after us. They were running light. And that's where you really see the AKs. And they had their own, like a chest thing where they'd pull the magazines out quickly. And they'd have a canteen, but they didn't carry a whole lot of extra extraneous gear. You know, we're carrying 75 to 90 pound rucksacks. These guys are traveling light because they got one thing to do, and that's to try to kill us. If they're on the road and they're on the march, then they're carrying a sleeping pad and some rice and all that. And of course, a lot of times they would stop at a rest stop, we'd call it, and there would be rice and that stuff there, so they didn't have to carry so much on their back as they're marching. And they might march 20, 25 miles a day. Some days they wouldn't go that far. Okay.
Would you like me to bring up some of your photos of your you loaded up for action?
Yeah.
Would you want to see some of the trail or?
No, well, as long as we're talking about loadouts, yeah, okay. Go ahead and put my pictures up.
All righty. I'm going to do the first one, and then the view when you first got in, and then when you're starting to carry more bandoliers to show the difference in your loadouts.
So this was November 1968 on my very first mission. Is there any way to enlarge it, Bud?
Yes, sir.
So I got stuck because it was my very first mission. I got stuck carrying the radio. So you can see the prick 25 on my back. And if you look right behind my left shoulder, you'll see the headset. So it wasn't for me to talk on. It was for our commander to talk on. So it didn't need to be where I could easily access it. I carried 2 extra batteries because these things ate up batteries. I mean, they ate them up. Every other American also carried 1 or 2 batteries, depending on how long we thought we were going to be out there. This was back, so this was when I first got there, so we were still carrying M16s. On my right shoulder, you can see it kind of protruding up at the very top. That was the nylon pouch that had our strobe light in it. And the whole purpose was that nylon pouch had a little snap at the top. And by wearing it up like that, at night, you could just unsnap it, and the nylon pouch would let the strobe light go straight up instead of lighting up the whole jungle around you. Then right below where Bud's cursor was, you can barely see it. That's one of those little, well, on my left too, right at the bottom of where my shirt's rolled up, you see an aluminum canister with tape on it. And that was one of these little mini smoke grenades that we had. Because, you know, the big smoke grenades were nice, but they were heavy too. I've got 3 of them out in my workshop. Oops, I shouldn't have said that. The ATF will come looking for me. I don't even know why I have them.
They're souvenirs, ATF, if you're listening. They're souvenirs.
Yeah. On my left there, eventually, and you'll see in one of the other pictures, I carried an Air Force survival knife. I think right there I'm carrying a bandage. You always wanted to have your medical supplies handy because if somebody gets wounded, sometimes it's a matter of life and death just how fast you can patch them up. Our standard procedure in the Hatchet Force was in our right chest pocket. We always carried 3 little, were called morphine syrettes. So they're little bitty things. Well, you can't see me. I'm trying to figure out. Little bitty things. They were probably 1.5 inches long. And you unscrew the top, turn it over, screw it in, and there's the needle, which is maybe 1 inch, 1.5 inches long. And the idea was you just sit there and jab it in your thigh and then squeeze it like a tube of toothpaste to get all the morphine out. And in about 10 or 15 minutes, you didn't give a shit what was going on. But while I'm describing the ammo pouch where your cursor is, can you get that canteen cover?
Yes, sir. Let me.
So the questions come up about how we carried our magazines. There were two different ways. And Robbie, no, that wasn't a magazine pouch. That's the kind of ammo pouch that Bud's holding, which was a standard 20-round magazine pouch. It held, I don't know, 3 or 4. But you see the way it opened and closed with that catch? If you're in the middle of a firefight, you ain't got time to be screwing with that crap. So the alternative was, and that's what you see on my belt my very first time out. As time went on, and you'll see in my other pictures, the canteen cover, you know, our canteens were plastic, and the canteen cover had 2 snaps on the top of it. And you could get 5 magazines in that. Bud's got it there. And then before you snapped it shut, there was enough slack at the top, you could put another grenade in there on top of your magazines. So it was another way to carry another grenade. Then you see on that ammo pouch in my picture, you'll see a grenade hanging off of each side. And I think I carried, well, we carried 400 rounds. That was pretty standard for Hatchet Force. 400 rounds, so that was 20-round magazines. But we also tried to carry as many grenades as we could. On my right chest in the front, that would be the gas mask. And Bud knows one of the stories about gas masks.
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to see what else. It's really hard to in that picture because it's not close up enough. What other gear? I think the other picture is going to be a much better representation. Yeah, see, that's the gas mask. Oh, and then on my left shoulder, besides that bandage, is the IRC-10 survival radio right there. So if the shit hit the fan and you get separated and whatever, every American had one of those IRC-10s, and you could communicate with Covey.
Terry, is that on your back shoulder right here? Is that your antenna to where you could make it long if need be?
That is, I call it the tape measure antenna. It is about 2 foot long. It looked like a tape measure painted OD green. And that's what you carried while you're on the move. Now at night, in your RON, if you needed to, you had that collapsible fold-up fiberglass antenna, the big, I call it the whip antenna, that was about, shoot, I don't even remember now. It was pretty long. And that would get up and help you get out of that triple canopy jungle. So that was tucked away inside my rucksack. Let's see. Bud was asking me about that white cord around my neck. That cord was attached to the signal mirror or a compass. I can't remember which now. I'm pretty sure it was attached to the compass. And then the signal mirror was in my other chest pocket. Unfortunately, I don't have a good picture of the signal mirror, but those of you guys that do a lot of the research know, you know, it was a rectangular mirror with rounded corners, and it had like a crosshair in the center. And so you could look through that crosshair and point it up through an opening in the trees and aim it right on the covey.
It almost looks like an iPhone, the size of it, you know,
yeah,
like this, so where you can
It was a little bit higher or thicker or whatever, but yeah, it was about the size of an iPhone. And then it had that little sight in the middle.
I'm gonna bring up your
bring up the other picture. Yeah.
new knife
Yeah.
placements. You've got your, I'll let you go into it. That's when you
Well,
really.
this one is a little bit different than normal because on across my chest, you see there was actually two additional bandoliers of ammo. That was not normal for Hatchet Force, but this was about the only time that as a squad leader, I got to sit in on the mission briefing. And CCN had taken an awful lot of casualties, and we were told that we were going into the DMZ, and that if we got in a firefight, which we definitely would, within, I don't know, 20 minutes, we would have 10,000 NVA in our immediate vicinity. So we just loaded down for bear. You can see the ammo pouches on my left hip. Everything is sagging because it was so damn heavy. I had a cravat around my neck, which later on, I got rid of the hats. Now, the hat had the orange panel sewn inside of it. So, again, if you got separated or something, you could turn it inside out, and the orange would be able to be seen by the covey or by the pilots. On the left shoulder, I think in that one is when I started carrying the Air Force survival knife upside down. Again, over on the right hip, you can see the strobe light. A lot of C4 claymores in the rucksack. Every American carried at least one, if not two, claymores. Sometimes we carried det cord. We usually carried 1 or 2 blocks of C4. Of course, you got to have my Seiko watch on too. Let's see. It's really hard to see much. Bud, what about the picture of my gear hanging on the wall? Because that's a pretty close-up picture.
That's a perfect one. Let me grab it right quick. And I'm actually going to, I'm in the process of finding your Air Force knives to show a picture of it as well.
Yeah.
But here we go. Can y'all see that clear?
There we go. Okay. So on the right is the indigenous rucksack. Most of us Americans carried the Indig rucksack. You can see it's bulging out. It had all kinds of stuff in there. I used an indigenous sleeping bag. They were very thin, very lightweight. They could roll up really tight. You can see, let's see, you got one canteen with a canteen in it. I see 3 other canteen covers, which all had magazines in them, and then you had those 2, the other kind, because you could stick a couple of grenades on each one. You see the gas mask. Yeah, you can see the Air Force survival knife. On the other shoulder is the strobe light, the little smoke. I like those little smoke canisters. In addition to those, a lot of us also carried a pen flare, which is about the size of an ink pen, and you screw this little flare on and pull the thing and cock it and fire it, and it would shoot a very small concentrated thing, but it would go up through the triple canopy jungle, and so the covey could see it, whereas if you threw a regular smoke grenade, most of the time, it would come out of the trees somewhere other than where you were at, because, it just couldn't get up. The smoke just couldn't get up through the triple canopy. All the way over on the left side of the screen is my rope that we carried to make a Swiss seat in case you had to come out on ropes. And usually I snap that onto my harness on my right chest. Well, I guess that's about all. That other magazine pouch on the lower left is for my grease gun. one of my toys that I had. I carried it one time on a mission to use on an ambush because I could put a bullet from that 45 through the truck into the engine block and disable the truck. But as it turned out, them 45 magazines plus the grease gun were so damn heavy to use just for something little like that. It was easier just to blow the truck up. So I only carried it out to the field once.
Picture of your grease gun.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you want me to show you the picture of your weapons? Let me see if I've got your weapon.
Yeah, because I want to answer a question somebody had the other day about how did you carry the M16 or the Car 15, and you'll be able to see it in that picture.
Yeah, here we go. Save toy scaled. Sorry, guys. I was about to bring up the grease gun photo, and I decided to go with the full.
Whatever.
Oh, no, this is perfect because the grease gun's in it as well.
Okay. So the question came up last week. How did you carry your Car 15 or your M16? And what you'll see there is how I carried it. I just made a strap out of 2 strands. It was actually one big long strand. It was parachute cord, nylon parachute cord. I looped it through the front sight and then ran it to the back, and there was a slot in the butt plate back there, and I ran it through there and tied it off. That allowed me to carry it at waist level, just in the perfect firing position if I was firing from the waist. Right above it is a little Browning 25 automatic that I carried the left-hand leg, the big cargo pocket. Inside that big cargo pocket was a little pocket, and I carried it in there. That was my last defense. You know, I'm not going to Hanoi. So that's why I carried it. One time I got caught coming back from the middle of the perimeter from a meeting, and an NBA was crawling towards my foxhole, and it took 3 shots from that 25 auto in his forehead to stop him. So in reality, they were good to throw at somebody, but that was about it. And then that pistol is a Smith & Wesson M&P 38 caliber with a 4-inch barrel. I got that. I traded something to a chopper pilot for that, and I carried that. One of the pictures, there's a picture, I don't know that you brought that up, of me just off the chopper from a mission, and I carried it right dead in the front where my belt buckle would be. I carried that right there because after I got shot the first time and my gun jammed and I didn't have another backup gun with me, it made a believer out of me, and I started carrying that pistol. Okay, well, still no questions. So.
Oh no, we've definitely got questions. Yes, sir. I was going to let you continue before I started interrupting and all that.
Well, that could be all day then. You know, I get to talking. First time you went out and you had to shoot the M79. Okay, how effective was the M79 for the Hatchet Force? Damn, Jason, it couldn't have been more effective. I mean, so think about this. 40 millimeter. So that thing is about, well, it's not as big around as your fist, but it's pretty damn big. And it looks like a miniature bullet. You know, it's short. It's probably 4 or 5 inches long. There was a bunch of different types of ammo as time went on that became available for it. When I first got there on this first mission that I'll explain, the only rounds that we had were the high explosive rounds. And in order for them to be effective, they had to go 15 yards, and they spin. And during that 15 yards, they activated the detonator. And so after 15 yards, they're armed. And when they hit something, they go off. Well, later on, they came out with white phosphorus rounds, which were dangerous. They came out with what we really liked in the jungle was flechette rounds. Yep, Buford, you got it. I don't know how many of the flechettes were in a single shell, but you can imagine a 40 millimeter shell with all these little tiny darts in it. In an ambush situation or even a close contact situation, or when they're trying to overrun you and you got hundreds of them coming at you, those flechette rounds were just the most badass thing in the world. Yeah, okay, Jason, we'll tell that story. So on my very first combat mission, it was a combined Hatchet Force mission of both companies, Company A and I was in Company B. So we're in, I don't know where we were at. I think we were in Hotel 9, but it was one of these areas where we knew it was a bad area. And we come down off of the one mountain, and when we get to the bottom, we fill our canteens. And I was up in the point element with Captain Ron Goulet, Lieutenant Jim Jerson, who are both deceased now. Let's see, that's my interpreter, Goy, and 3 other yards were the very forward point guys. Well, when you get ready to start going up another mountain and there's steps cut into the mountain, you know it's fixing to happen. It's just how quickly. So we get to the top of the next mountain that we're going up. We go up the steps. And according to the map, there was if you go down the other side and you cross the Ho Chi Minh Trail, there's supposed to be a big open area. And the idea was to get across that open area and up on the next mountain before nightfall. And then we're up on the high ground. And then the trucks going by at night, we could send a team down there and ambush a convoy. Well, I said we couldn't see because of the triple canopy, and I unbuckled my web gear, and I said, let me climb this tree, because back then I was like a monkey and I could climb pretty good. I said, let me climb this tree, and if I get far enough up, maybe I can see if that open area is really there or not. Well, just as I unbuckled my belt, a rifle grenade went off, and it killed the 3 Montagnards that were in the very front. And everybody hits the ground, you know, and all the shooting starts. Well, then another grenade goes off and lands in the proximity of the guys that are still coming up the hill. Of course, we had, 200 and some guys back on the previous mountain, plus coming down, plus our guys coming up. And my rifle took a hit right in the flash guard. So rifle's no good. My rucksack's got bullets all the way across. And I was like, oh shit, this is my first time in combat. So the first thing that came to mind was I crawled over to the guys still coming up the hill, and I got an M79 and a bandolier of ammo. I had enough experience down on our range training to know that M79 had to go 15 yards. Well, these guys what we didn't know is we walked right up on a major trail, and these guys were either a listening post or they had an ambush set up waiting on us. I don't know. We'll never know. But anyway, I knew, okay, I can't fire directly at them. I got an M79. I should have played Rambo and got an M60 and just walked at them. But I took this M79 and I aimed it up at just a barely slight angle, just enough. In my mind, I calculated that it would probably come down about 50 to 75 feet away from us, which is where the bad guys were. So I started lobbing M79 rounds, one right after the other. And all of a sudden the shooting stopped. And there weren't any more bad guys after that. And one of the weapons that we policed up was an M16 that had some kind of malfunction, and the receiver blew up, which kind of reminds you of the pole beam, the ammo, doctored ammo that we would leave behind for the AKs. But I never heard of it being done to American ammo. But anyway, the gun blew up, and of course the guy, what it did to him. The serial number on that rifle was traced back to the battle at Docto of, what was it called, Hill 875 in 1967, when the 173rd went up that hill and took massive casualties. So that gun was traced back to the 173rd. But that was my introduction to another way of using an M79 effectively in that heavy jungle. Because if I would have just fired it straight on, it would have hit a tree and maybe bounced back and killed us. So it was just a creative way of using it. Okay, bud, where are we at?
Let me pull up another one. I've got some really interesting photos while someone's wanting to know about right here while I'm getting some photos together.
Just like a shotgun. If you can imagine, I'm assuming it went out, in a spread, just like a shotgun does. I would think probably, because I don't know any specs on it, I would think probably as it spread out, it would cover, 20, 30 feet at least.
Yeah.
The further it went out, the more it's going to spread. And there would be literally hundreds of those little darts in there.
And I'll show y'all, for y'all that maybe have not seen any. This is from our guest, the Pink Panther pilot, Woody Woodard. He sent me a little goodie package last year of some flechettes, and he put this. That is a flechette round right there.
That's it.
It's a nail with fins on the back. If you can see those fins right there. And I mean, they can literally bush hog and nail people to the trees and surrounding area. And he put, this flechette is one of 2,200, and each rocket that we would carry 76 rockets on the Cobra in total. So you can imagine 2,200 of these. I don't know, again, how much y'all had them in the M79, but it was still enough of these bad boys to wreak havoc.
We didn't start getting the flechette rounds until, I want to say, maybe the middle of '69. Prior to that, we just had the HE and, I don't know, maybe the white phosphorus. If I don't wear out my welcome and I get invited back again, I'm going to have a picture of an actual 2.75 millimeter rocket with full of flechettes that belonged to one of our crew chiefs who donated to the Special Operations Association. Okay, so this was, so this was just off the chopper from a mission. I'm wearing a black sweater. They gave us a lot of goodie stuff that nobody else ever had. You can kind of see the parachute cord over my right shoulder coming down to the front sight on my AR. You can see my pistol right there in the middle of my belt. You can see the masking tape holding my Air Force survival knife. Right below that, I don't know what that is. Oh, it's probably a bandage because we all tried to carry at least a bandage that was easy to get to. What do you call it? The strobe light on my right shoulder. I see one grenade right there. You can kind of see the canteen covers bulging out. It was real easy in a firefight. If you're on the move, it's different than if you're in a static position. If you're in a static position, I didn't want to, you want to pick up your empty mags when stuff dies down and bring them back because, there could be a shortage of mags or something and you don't want to end up being short. Robbie, I don't even know what a British 7-pouch bandolier is. So I guess the answer would be no. I don't know what that.
This is interesting right here. A guest we'll be having on, Dave Hall, who is a GWAT Navy SEAL trained by Vietnam SEALs, has just updated me and said there are 115 flechettes in each 40 millimeter XM 1001 grenade. I messed that all up, but he says there are 115 of those bad boys in there.
Wow. I would have thought there'd be more, but that's still, if you think about it, that's a hell of a lot of brush cutting.
Absolutely.
And it would really literally shred all the leaves on the trees, and take, let's see, anti-venom. Never heard of anti-venom over there. My experience with the most venomous snake over there, at least that's what we were told, and I think it's true, was with a green, beautiful little green snake about 2 foot long called a bamboo viper. And when I first got over there to 5th Group and we went out to the Entree Island and we were doing our little field problem or whatever, patrol, I walked under this tree branch and there was this beautiful little green snake crawling along it right above my head. And I got under it and our instructor said, "Do you know what you just did?" And it's like, "Yeah, I just walked under a tree limb." He said, "That pretty little green snake is a bamboo viper." He said, "If it bites you, you're going to be dead in about 30 seconds. Scared to the living, because me and snakes don't have a good history. I've had experiences back home with copperheads, rattlesnakes, water moccasins, and if it ain't got shoulders, kill it. I really don't do that because black snakes and hog snakes are good for killing all kinds of stuff, but I just don't like snakes. So that bamboo viper, they say, was the most poisonous. I don't know if that's true or not, but it was pretty damn poisonous if you're going to be dead in 30 seconds. But I never heard anything about anti-venom. I just don't think it was there back then.
I don't think later in years recon teams, but I've never heard any outright stories. And as a matter of fact, like you said, they always said, even if we have it, you're dead. I mean, it was so quick and so potent. So,
we carried so much other stuff. It's one of those things that I guess I'll take my chances, I guess is a way of saying it,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Did you carry a medic pouch?
A little bit of, yeah, it probably is. We all carried a certain amount of medical supplies because, I mean, if you think about it, what if your medic gets hit? Or if you get separated. So we all carried a certain amount of medical supplies. And it could be that medic pouch didn't even have medical supplies in it. It may have had, who knows, something else. Guys, you got to remember on some of these questions, we're going back 50 some years, and I have short-term memory loss. They tell me it's from too many explosions, and my brain is kind of rattled. So some stuff is a fog.
You've got a heck of a memory, that's for sure. So we're just glad you're here to be able to share it.
GS, my answer hasn't changed the whole time I was there. We started out with 20 mags, 20 round mags. So that's 400 rounds. Every once in a while, if you were going into certain places like Hotel 9, for instance, you might carry an extra bandolier or two, either in your ruck or across your chest. I didn't find that. I know in that one picture I had two of them across my chest, but that's because we were going into North Vietnam. But most of the time, the bandoliers were in the rucksack because I got 20 mags on my belt, so I could take my time getting to those. So 400 rounds. Now over time, in the recon teams, I didn't know anybody in the Hatchet Force that ever had a 30-round mag. Not that they didn't, but I never knew of one. But Plaster got a deal with somebody back in the States, and they started buying 30-round mags for the recon teams. And I've heard of recon teams, somebody that was on, I don't know, last week or the week before mentioned carrying 600 rounds. Well, I mean, if you're on a recon team, I don't know what's the right term, safety in numbers in a Hatchet Force, you could better afford to only have 400 rounds on the Hatchet Force, whereas a recon team, 600 rounds might not be enough. Because there's a lot of stories about guys running down to their last mag. Once you're out of ammo, you got grenades and whatever.
Some of the guys and some of the guys recon teams would go out with 20 mags and stuff like that, and then like you said, some would just get astronomically up there with the 600, the 700. One guy I spoke to, I think, ended up getting 800 or something. I mean, I don't see how he.
God.
Yeah, but he was only running 6 men.
Right. What I would say to everybody that's listening, especially if you own an AR, take 20 loaded magazines and hold it, and then add on the 75 pounds in your rucksack. You're carrying a lot of weight. When it's all said and done, you're carrying over 100 pounds. And you're humping up straight up mountains and straight down and straight up and straight down. And you might only cover 2 clicks a day or something because of that. So when you think about all that weight, and it's 100 to 120 degrees out on top of that, it's a lot of weight.
A lot. This is interesting too. I'm always curious about this. Jason.
Yes, Jason, there were. Again, you're talking to the weapons guy. I had one. I traded. This was a funny thing. I don't think today you could get away with it. But when I was at the yard camp, which was 3 or 4 miles down the road from the FOB, we had an engineer group adjoining our camp. And they were I think they were like a blacktop unit. So they were going up and down Highway 14 blacktop and the roads and that kind of stuff. One of those guys had a Winchester, and I'm not sure the model number, a Winchester 12-gauge shotgun. I think it was a Model 97 trench gun, they called them, from World War I. I traded him an M16. We had the ability to turn in weapons as what they called battlefield loss. So it was lost in action. And I traded an M16 for this 12-gauge Winchester shotgun. It was a pump. And thanks to Bob Howard, our famous Medal of Honor recipient, he was able to come up with some double-aught buck for that shotgun.
Ooh.
So it got modified, had a shortened barrel, cut the stock off to make it into like a pistol grip. And again, one of my brilliant ideas, like carrying the grease gun for an ambush, I thought, well, hell, that 12 gauge on an ambush, that 12 gauge loaded with double-aught buck, man, I could take out a whole squad. So I carried it once. And once again, it was a good idea that wasn't such a great idea because of the weight. And it was cumbersome. I mean, let's face it, if we got in a firefight, I'm not going to be firing that 12 gauge, most likely, because it's going to be back on my rucksack. I'm going to be firing my AIM-16. So again, you know, another idea that sounded good, but it just wasn't from a practical standpoint. In reality, you get ambushed in something, and more often than not, in an ambush situation, you don't even see the guys that are ambushing you. All you do is you see the flash of their weapons. In that situation, that double-aught buck would have come in really handy. Man, you could brush hog some trees with that thing. But again, do I want to carry it for 5 days? No. So I carried it the one time, and like I say, it was a Winchester. I'm not sure the model. I think it was a 97, which I have one out one of my gun safes, but I can't remember. Okay. When in a firefight, you try to stick to semi-auto. For the most part. Again, it's one of those things, all you're doing, you put it on full auto. That's why they finally went to having the 3-round bursts instead of being able to just fire full auto. Yeah, full auto, you could lay down a good base of fire, but all you're doing is burning through your ammo, and you still don't even see what you're shooting at except for a flash. So semi-auto was a lot better. I think it was a lot more practical. Now the yards, no matter how much you practiced IADs and stuff, when the shooting starts, the yards are going to burn through magazines as fast as they can change them. It was just the nature of the beast. But on the American side, there were times when you wanted to fire full auto, but most of the time semi-auto was a lot more practical. So wow. I hope that answered it.
Yes, sir. And then maybe a Winchester model 1897 trench gun probably you had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I have.
Bad weapon.
That's what I have out in my one of my gun safes. What's the craziest thing you witnessed? Close calls. Oh God, there's so many. Let's see. I think one of the craziest, for me anyway, and again, this was in January of '69, so I had been there, let's see, October, November, December 3rd. I was on my 4th month there. I'd been on several missions, and then I got punished, and I spent the whole month of December up on Leghorn. I got punished for having a Montagnard girlfriend. That's a whole nother story. And if Vernon Ward gets on here, I'll deny everything he says. But we were coming out of, and I believe it was Hotel 9, from a mission that's talked about in Joe Parner's new book, Contum. All of a sudden, we start seeing all these black puffs of smoke all around us. And that was a, what was it, 51 caliber anti-aircraft
37
gun?
or 51 or 37, yes, sir.
Yeah, whichever one shot the flak that made the big black puffs of smoke.
Yep, that'd be the 51 ACAC.
Yeah, so, you're sitting in a Huey, and it's not the most comfortable ride in the world because that aluminum floor is solid as a rock. Your legs are hanging over the side. There's bad guys on the ground, and you're just firing it up and thinking, man, this is pretty cool shit. And all of a sudden you start seeing all this flak going off, and the door gunner leans over to me and he says, flak. Well, I knew what flak was because my dad flew B-25s in Europe in World War II, and he had many stories about the flak. Well, all of a sudden, we lose the engine. And the door gunner took some shrapnel in the face, and then he leans over to me in between his hands holding the blood, and he says, we're going in, hold on. And the Hueys, and of course, another one of these things you learn as time goes on, they were designed that if they lost the engine or the transmission, they were designed to go into auto rotation, which was a big spiral. So they start, and the spiral gets wider and wider as it gets closer and closer to the ground. Well, then when it comes into the ground, you're coming in at a downward angle, and those skids hit the ground, you know, and you're sitting, well, your hips and your lower back take all the impact of that crash. And we didn't learn until many years later that I broke my back when it crashed. But the thing that was the craziest thing is, here's a chopper that, yeah, it lost its engine, but essentially it's not damaged any other way. And we all get out of the chopper because you don't know if it's going to catch on fire or whatever. And the pilot tells me to take my C4 if I have any left, and I did, and put it up by the instruments and the radios. Then we go get on the, and in my mind I'm thinking, well, why am I going to do that? Because surely they're going to come in and lift this chopper out and take it back and fix it. Oh no, we get on the chase ship and we get up in the air, and all of a sudden the Cobras come in and blew that sucker, what looked like a perfectly good chopper, and they blew that sucker to kingdom come. And I'm just thinking in my mind, God, what a waste of a chopper. But, you know, I mean, there's other crazy stories, but I guess what's the definition of crazy? You know, I mean, having 1,000 or more NVA coming at you when you're on the LZ, and then watching the gunships do their thing, or the napalm or whatever, that's crazy too. But I think stories, to me, stories like blowing up the chopper and all that, I don't know. I think those are maybe neater stories than, you know, watching 1,000 guys get mowed down by a gunship.
Some of I mean, you've done so much, and there's a question that's coming into another part that's another interesting, I thought is an interesting part on you. But I mean, heck, all of your Leghorn experiences, not to mention your helicopter crashes. I mean, you've got so many interesting stories. I mean, it's unbelievable. And before you answer this, I just want to preface this. This is a great section in Joe Parnar's book. And Terry will go into this, but Terry, it makes it sound like the guys didn't come across Punji very often. And I think Terry has a very interesting subject on that.
Before I answer Robbie's question, let me just say this. As wild and crazy as some of my stories may seem, I can virtually guarantee you that every single guy in SOG that ever went across the fence has stories that are equally as, whatever you want to call them, crazy, unbelievable, whatever. Every one of us has those stories. So it's not just me, because the nature of what we did made it crazy. So, yeah, so my stories are not unique. To me, they're just run of the mill. Every guy that went over there has their stories. Okay, Robbie, in my year and a half there, I only came across one booby trap, and I damn near stepped in it. And that was in the same mission in January of '69 in Hotel 9. we were coming down off the mountain to the road, and we're going to walk the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which we'll show pictures of later. And here was a punji pit. It was maybe 3 foot wide by 2 foot, maybe 3 foot by 2 foot. And it was about 2 foot deep, and it was full of punji stakes. Not only is it the only time I ever saw a booby trap over in Laos, I never heard of any, because if you think about it, we're in their backyard, and we're up so close to them most of the time that if they put out booby trap, they're going to be killing their own people. So within Laos or Cambodia or North Vietnam, booby traps were not a regular thing. The guys inside South Vietnam, completely different story, totally different. But within Laos, Cambodia, and North Vietnam, they don't want to hurt their own guys. So, hope that answered it, Robbie.
Absolutely, that's one of my favorites.
Anything you want to get your hands on but couldn't. You know, I heard stories about the gyrojet pistol, and growing up with guns, I was fascinated with the idea of firing a pistol that had a mini rocket, and when it hit whatever it hit, it was going to go off. And we had one there at the FOB, and I always wanted to get it and play with it, just play with it. They were not reliable. They were made out of, kind of like the grease gun, they were made out of stamped metal, very cheaply made. And I've heard stories that they cost less than $10 to produce. But I just wanted to play with it. I thought it was the idea sounded cool, because here we are in a war that doing stuff that we're not supposed to be doing. And this was about the time, or right after the time, when James Bond movies started coming out. And here we are, we're thinking, well, James Bond ain't got nothing on us. Hell, we got a rocket pistol. But I never got to play with it. And Howard told me that it wasn't for playing. Howard was something else. He would keep you straight, and he'd tell you the straight shit because he had the experience.
I've recently made contact with a man who he's the only man in SOG history that I've ever spoken to who actually enjoyed the gyrojet pistol, and that's David Kirschbaum of RT Maine. And he took it out one time, and it evidently worked great. But he says he could put a round in anything, and it 50 yards and just blow the ever-loving hell out of the truck or whatever he was aiming at. But everybody else says it was just garbage.
It was I never got to play with it, so I'm relying on other people that it was a piece of crap. It was a good idea, but it was not practical. So Kirschbaum had an experience that was rarely experienced.
Few and far between.
Yeah. I mean,
I think I'm going to pull up a gyrojet if the dadgum internet will ever get. But here's a good question while I'm getting a picture up.
SOG take on and give preference to the LERP blokes. They were specialists and almost ghosts. I'm sure they would have suited. Go back to 1960s. The answer the simple answer would be no. And I don't want to offend anybody, but you got to think about the mentality at the time. SOG was made up of people from different branches in different capacities. But the guys on the ground, and there's a lot of examples. Howard is one. guys who were not SF qualified that came from like the 101st, the Pukin Buzzards, or the 173rd that had prior combat experience, they came in, and somehow there was a procedure where after a period of time, they could actually get SF qualified without going through the SF training group per se. They got kind of like getting a battlefield commission. I'd say they got their battlefield SF. And it doesn't take anything away from them. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. The Gyrojet. I never personally knew anybody that had been like a LERP or Marine Force Recon or whatever who came into SOG, but they were there. I just personally didn't know of any. And I never really heard it talked about either.
Franklin Miller would be the closest thing that I could think of in your time frame, coming from the 101st, their recon, or I forgot which one he was in, but the recon element. And then I get conflicting reports. I don't know if he went through training group or not and he got pretty much accepted as a Green Beret after his first tour and getting into SOG at CCC.
My understanding is that he was one of these examples of what I'd call a direct commission. He earned it the hard way.
Kind of like Lou DeSeta too, actually, with the 173rd.
Yeah, there was apparently there was a bunch of guys. At the time, I wasn't even aware that that was a reality or a possibility. Let's see. Where are we at, bud? Didn't you guys carry a Chop 79? Is your first... The first mag for me, and it was a matter of personal preference. For me, my first mag had 5 tracers in it, and that gave me a chance to get on target. But after that, it was the last round, and each mag had a tracer round in it. So you hit that last round, you know it's time to change mags. Did any of our guys... Well, Buford, I guess we got to define any of our guys. In the Hatchet Force, the answer, to my knowledge, would be a big no. I don't know of anybody carrying a Chop 79 in Hatchet Force. In the recon teams, completely different answer. There was a lot of the recon teams, apparently, listening to a lot of the stories, apparently a lot of the guys in the recon teams carried a Chop Down 79 as a secondary backup weapon, usually for a specific use, like, for instance, an ambush or whatever. You know, my wife keeps telling me I got to quit moving around so much, but
you're fine, sir.
Did you ever have to think like that? Well, again... Yeah, the yards, they just like to blow through mags. I think they thought it was cool to fire full auto and that it was going to have more effect than conserving their ammo. So on the recon teams, I can see where a 1-0 maybe had to hand out some mags because the yards have used up all their mags. In Hatchet Force, I never saw that being an issue. I'd like to say it's because we had more control over our yards, but that's not really, you know, I think it was just because there was more of us, you're putting out a higher volume of fire at any given time, so you negate the enemy without having to use up all your ammo. And there were even a few times where they resupplied us with more ammo. You know, a couple of times we had resupplies because we did use up most of our ammo.
Let's see. Oh, here's one that ties in right here that's very interesting. I've got some pictures.
Oh, hell no. No, we did not keep going and to remain unnoticed. What we would usually do if we find a bunker, I will call them bunkers rather than tunnels. More of the tunnels, the actual tunnel stuff was inside South Vietnam. But if we found what I'd call a bunker complex or something, you never know who's in there, and I sure as hell ain't going in there. See, there's this bunker was at a truck stop on the trail, and after it got blown up with a law rocket, you see the little cubby hole going back in there, and that's where the guy that shot me crawled in and didn't want to come out. What we would do would be, yeah, well, yeah. You're not going to show that picture though, are you?
No, no, sir.
No, we don't need to see all the blood and guts.
No, wouldn't do that.
We all carried CS grenades with us. Or later on, there was one called CNDN or something. I don't know, but we would carry CS grenades with us. And when you get these bunker complexes, you don't know if they're in there or not. So what the hell? You'd love to have a prisoner, so you throw a CS grenade in there and hope to smoke them out. There's a little bunker along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. I mean, it's right off the edge of the trail. Not very big. I never bothered to look in it to see just how big it was, but probably held a couple of guys. And those were all up and down the trail. When you had a high bank on the trail, they would put these bunkers in there. And that way, if there's airstrikes or whatever, getting too close to them, they'd get in those bunkers and figure they'd have some level of protection. So that bunker there might hold 2 or 3 guys. It might hold 4 or 5. I don't know. I wasn't going to go in it. Be my luck, I'd go in there and meet a snake. So
I'm going to go ahead and bring up the Ho Chi Minh trail photos while I'm going through the last.
Yeah, let's do the trail. So I kind of got into, on Facebook, I kind of got into a pissing contest with a guy that I found out later had been a SOG guy. But he was arguing that the term trail was actually a high-speed highway, which in parts it was. This picture here, if you look on the right-hand side, you'll see a picture of the back of one of my yards. And then about halfway down, I think that's me sitting there after I got shot, waiting on the medic to get there to bandage me up. But if you look straight down the road, it's a road that carried a high volume of truck traffic. So you can see how well cleared off it was. Now, in some areas, but not every area, in some areas, they would actually take the bamboo on both sides of the road, and somehow they'd able to get up high enough where they could bend it over, and then they would tie it together so it formed an arch over the road to help hide it from view of the planes. But this is the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and the night before I got shot, we're camped up at the top of the hill, which would be on the left side of the picture, and we hear trucks all night long. So that's not, some areas, what people called the trail was nothing more than a footpath. Now you see that's all been blown up. So in some places, yes, it was nothing more than a trail or a footpath, but the majority of it was a series of roads that was big enough for truck traffic as well as foot traffic. Now, like in this case, that road's probably 15 feet wide, maybe. Yeah, about 15 feet wide. So it's wide enough. You could even have trucks going down it and troops in single file or double file alongside a truck. I mean, it was wide enough for that.
Absolutely.
You know,
great photo.
when you start blowing shit up like that, and you see all the bamboo that's down across the road, and you can't see very far down the road, I guarantee you, by the next day, that thing's all cleared out. Because they had, what was it, the 519th Transportation Battalion that went up and down the road with crews. They had bulldozers. They had all kinds of equipment. And anytime you bomb the trail, and you'll see a couple other pictures of what that looked like, they had that stuff cleared up by the next day at the latest, if not within a few hours. So, yeah, so when you talk about the definition of the trail, this is my classic definition of the trail. That's what it looked like. And that's the kind of trails that we saw probably 99% of the time.
And,
okay, buddy, how about the picture from the air?
Yeah, that's one I was about literally bringing up. Great minds think alike. Here we go.
Somebody had a question. Should we have answered that last question that just popped up, or is that about something else?
This is about something else.
Okay.
We can finish up the trail, but there's a great look of what
this is a great picture of the trail out in the wide open. This was, what's the right words? Very unusual to see this much of a road that's that exposed out in the open. I'm not sure where that was at exactly. Well, I mean, obviously it was in Laos, but I can't remember what it. Well, you know what? I can. I got shot in Lima 6, so this is after I got pulled out, and I was sitting in the doorway of the King Bee taking pictures. So it was somewhere in that area. But what a prime target for airstrikes at night, because it's wide open. I mean, if there's trucks on that road, you're going to be able to see them, even though they're driving without their lights on.
I'm hoping to have a gunship pilot who wrote the history of the Spectre gunship during Vietnam.
Oh, and, cool.
He's going to greatly go into detail on how they updated the systems to just wreak havoc on the trucks.
So for everybody listening, one of the things that Bud and I have been trying to put together, and we aren't having a lot of luck so far, is having a whatever we want to call this, a program or a show or whatever, of me talking about the perspectives of different things from the ground, and a pilot, whether it be an A1 pilot or a chopper pilot, talking about their perspective from up in the air as opposed to our perspective on the ground. Because I know from conversations I've had with some of the chopper pilots, what they were seeing was so totally different from what we were seeing. And I thought it would be interesting.
We are definitely going to be.
But
oh yeah, I was just showing the guys your the Air Force knife and the knife in the middle. I think you used. I can't.
This is what I carried right here. The one in the middle. You had a sharpening stone on the front. If you look at the top of the hilt on both the two on the right, it's like a octagonal shaped, a big, heavy. You could use it as a hammer. Solid piece of steel. So you could use it as a hammer. The blade, I wish there was a picture of the blade. It's kind of short, but one side is sharpened and the other side had saw teeth on it. So you could cut,
Oh, wow.
You could cut wood or bamboo or whatever.
Excellent. Okay.
So that was my choice. I've heard a lot of the recon guys say that they carried
K-bars.
K-bars. Whatever. It was, again, it's one of those things that was pure preference. I didn't plan in Hatchet Force. I didn't plan on getting in a hand-to-hand fight with anybody. So the K-bar I didn't need it. I like the Air Force survival knife.
And between the K-bar and that, those are usually the two higher or the most mentioned, other than the older guys using the
Randalls.
The Randalls, yes, sir. Did you have another picture, or did you want me to get into questions that we've got?
No, you have one more picture of the trail from the air showing all the bomb craters and stuff.
Oh, okay. Let me get that.
And I think that's a better one to give the guys an idea from the air what it looked like.
Share screen. Here we go. Boom.
Yep. There you go.
There she goes, right down the middle.
What you can't really tell in this picture, there's actually, if you look at it, there's two parallel roads going side by side. There's the one that Bud's moving his cursor up and down, and then there's that one. And we think, I mean, we don't know, that the one on the left had just been so heavily bombed that they just built a new one just right next to it. But you can see those high mountains. You can see how the trail just wound around at the base of the mountains. See? Yeah.
I mean, look at the amazing amount of work they go into.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, utterly devastated here. And
like I said, they had bulldozers. So it's not like you had a bunch of coolies with shovels or anything.
Oh, no. And like you said, I mean, y'all would knock them out, and next thing y'all know, y'all waking up hearing another bulldozer moving that one out of the way and continue working.
Okay, so in this picture, stop your cursor there, bud. Right there. Okay, if you follow that, you can see like a line. That's the actual footpath. Then just to the left of that cursor, looks to me like a creek or a stream or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then over to the left was where they blew the shit out of the road, and they could maybe still wind their way through there, but okay, Bud, go real slow, go up, a little more, keep going up. Right, stop. Now, go to the left, keep going. Right there, you're on the road. Now, stop. Now, if you go down at about 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Okay. Now, look to the left and you can see the road, but you also see a loop, and you're in the center of that loop. See how the road has a loop around it? Mm-hmm. And again, just speculating from the air, but I got a feeling that it could be because part of the road got blown up so bad that they just kind of made a loop around.
Wow. I mean,
these guys were not a bunch of third world clowns running around with AKs. These guys knew what they were doing, and they were very well organized, and
and determined beyond all, absolute determination.
I just found another section of a road that I had never even noticed before down at the bottom, right about in the center, now to the right on the screen. Okay, no, too far. Right there. So if you follow that to the very bottom of the screen and then you follow it up and it makes a curve to the left because it's going at the very base of a mountain, which is what almost all of the roads did. They wound around in between the mountains on the low spot because they didn't want to have to blast a road like we do today. So the more I look at this picture, the more I'm picking out. I see 2 or 3 different roads or pathways. Some of it I had never even really noticed before.
I mean, to pick out the stream, the road, and then
Yeah.
I would have never seen that had you not pointed out the curvatures.
I never noticed it either. Now, yeah.
And it looks like they've damaged a little bit of it, but not yet.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, you got to remember too, these guys are flying over at 100 and some miles an hour. When they drop their bombs, they're pretty good in the area, but they're not going to be necessarily, because we didn't have laser guided bombs at that time.
No, much later.
Okay. Did you ever plan for siege attack? Let's put it like this, Jason. We didn't live. We lived for going out to the woods. We didn't live for staying in camp and waiting for them to attack us. However, like at the yard camp, we had a security company, and that was their sole function. And if we weren't out in the woods, a lot of times, us Americans, we'd get details together and we'd work on some of our camp defenses and all that. And it's probably for another time, but in March of 69, the word was that this is the yard camp. In the top, you see the road coming up from the highway through the entrance to the camp. The American rooms were there on the right. That building on the left was the dispensary. And the chopper pad was between the road and the outer walls of the camp. And I've got a ton of pictures like this that show more of the camp. But in March of 69, we did get word that the local VC and NVA were planning an attack. We didn't know specifically if it was at the FOB or if it was at the yard camp. As it turned out, on March 17th, it was the yard camp. And there's pictures of, let's put it like this, again, probably for another time, but just to build up a little interest in it. The very first, when I heard the whoomp of a couple of mortar rounds going off, I yelled incoming. The first round went off directly over the poker table. The second round went off directly over the bar. The third round went off in the American shower area, and the first sergeant happened to be taking a shower when it hit. Luckily, he wasn't injured. These guys, even the local Viet Cong were, when it came to sighting in a mortar round or a 122 rocket, whatever, these guys were masters at it. The night then, when they attacked our camp, the next day, we had a bunch of new recruits, and I caught a Montagnard recruit walking off the water tower and the generator, and I grabbed him, and in his shirt pocket, he had all these, how many paces from here to here and from here to here and whatever. So that's what they did, and that guy went for a ride. I'll leave it at that. Yeah, there you go. That's the second round that hit right over the bar. Just to the right over here, to the right in that picture was the poker table. And that's where the first round hit. And yeah, so that's how good they were. And then when we did a sweep around the camp the next day, we found foil packets, heroin. We found where they had chained, what they probably did was they grabbed a bunch of locals, chained them to a tree and gave them a mortar and got them hopped on heroin. We also found brand new Vietnamese money, which was probably counterfeit. So they would grab locals, and they had the locals firing the mortars while the regular hardcore bad guys were trying to get through our walls into our camp. And that didn't go over too well. So, okay. What enemy ever freeze up under pressure? Chad, I'm not going to go into that because I don't want to name names. But if somebody froze up, I guarantee you, without naming his name, that as soon as we got back to camp, he was gone. You can't have anybody freezing up out there. Everybody back then, everybody thinks it's cool. Oh, I'm going to be a Green Beret. Wow. And you go home and impress the girls and all that crap. But when the shit hits the fan, if you can't react to all your training, you're putting everybody else's life in jeopardy. And, they're gone. As soon as you get back to camp, they're gone. And yes, I know of 2 or 3 instances firsthand of that. Fortunately, it wasn't very often. So.
And it did. And I'm not going to name names, but I know after your tour with some Hatchet Forces guys from CCC that some guys didn't freeze, but they definitely weren't ready for what they were going into, and they got them a different job.
So, that, and somebody asked me this question. I guess I'm not as computer savvy as I think I am, but some guys who have listened to the previous, what do we call them, broadcasts?
Sit-downs.
Contacted me privately, and somehow they tracked down my email. Of course, I'm on, do a Google search on my name, and you'll find all kinds of shit. But, and they've asked me, questions like that. And, even after all these years, you don't want to name names. And some of it, there's some things that are best left unsaid, where I was going with this is it's a mindset. When you volunteer for Special Forces, you should have a pretty good idea what you're volunteering for. Same with volunteering for jump school, okay? You're going to jump out of airplanes. If you're scared of doing that, then don't volunteer for it. You're going to volunteer for Special Forces. Well, the official function of Special Forces was to train indigenous peoples and this kind of stuff. We were called a force multiplier. If you're going to volunteer for Vietnam, you're volunteering to go to war. Well, what do you do in a war? You shoot people, you kill people, you see people get killed, all that kind of stuff. And then you volunteer for SOG. Once you've already signed the 20-year non-disclosure and you find out what the hell it's all about, okay, you've done all these things that you volunteered for. If you're not mentally prepared to do what it's going to take to do what you volunteered for, then get the hell out and make room for somebody else before you get other people killed. And I've got a real hard ass attitude about some of that because of just that it's very easy to get other people killed because you can't handle it. So if you can't handle it, get the hell out before you get kicked out, because eventually you're going to be found out and you're going to be gone anyway. So I don't know. I've just got a real hard ass attitude about it. There's a lot of things that bother me that we did in that, but I don't have PTSD. At least I don't think I do. I know when I'm driving, my wife thinks I might have PTSD because you don't want to sit at a green light with me behind you, you know. But I just really feel like if you're going to do all this volunteering, you should be doing it with your eyes wide open. And if you can't handle it, the minute you figure out you can't handle it, get out. That's my take on it, you know.
Absolutely. Speaking of all of this, with it being so secret and everything, I'd be anxious to see what you think about this.
Hell no. Nobody knew about it. So if nobody knows about it, we would have no idea how famous it's going to be one day, because we had no idea that. Personally, I feel very flattered that you guys are even doing all this to talk about it, because when we volunteered for it, again, it goes back to the mindset. When we volunteered for it, we didn't volunteer for it with the idea that, oh, this is going to give me a bunch of good shit to write a book about 50 years from now. We did it because, and this goes back to something somebody asked me privately, I firmly believe that after a while, we became adrenaline junkies. You're always living for the next mission. You're living for the next firefight. You're living for the next airstrike. You became adrenaline junkies. And to me, one of the things that bears that out is the fact that I don't know the exact numbers, but I venture to guess that probably 80 to 90% of the guys in SOG extended and spent more than just one tour. Because of that, you got to have, I know when I went back to the States, and this kind of goes back to the mindset, what did you do? Somebody asked me this. What did you do to deal with the stress of seeing your buddies killed, or, you know, killing people or whatever? There was one of our guys from CCC was on a couple of weeks ago, and he said he never saw any drugs at CCC. I have to argue with him. The guys would go to town. The guys that did drugs, they'd go to town and come back with this huge, I mean, we're talking a huge plastic bag full of marijuana for $4 and, well, it was 500 piastres, which was about $4 and something American money. Me, if you see any of the pictures of my hooch, I bought a little, what they call apartment-sized refrigerators at the PX. I had to sweeten the deal for the guy at the PX to do it, but I got a refrigerator, drank a lot of soda, but I also drank a lot of beer. When I came home from Vietnam the second time, I was drinking 2 cases of Budweiser a day. And I woke up one morning and I said, this is going to get me nowhere. And so before I went down and reported in down at Bragg to the 7th group, I went cold turkey, and I like to die.
Oh,
but you know, we all handled it in different ways, but we handled it. I don't know. It's just, it's never bothered me to talk about it. The things that over the years that have really pissed me off are the guys that claim they were in SF or claim they were in SOG, and you do a little digging or you talk to them for 2 minutes and you realize they probably were never even in the Army. Back in, I guess it was the beginning of the 90s, I was a manager at the telephone company in St. Louis. And all of a sudden it seemed like it became fashionable to talk about Vietnam again. And so I was probably the only guy in a building of maybe 250 people. I'm probably the only one in there that had ever spent a day in the military to start with, much less what I did. And my ex-wife, who also worked there, another big mistake, but one day she told me, she said, you know, some people don't believe some of your stories. And that really pissed me off, from coming from a bunch of people that never been there, never done that, to say they don't believe the stories. And I told her, I said, take my albums of pictures to work and show them the fucking pictures. If they don't believe it, I can't help them, you know? That's the kind of stuff over the years that's really bent me out of shape. Besides stupid drivers, but that's a whole nother deal. Okay, bud, where are we going with this?
Yes, sir. I wanted to show people your little, before we get to the next question, your refrigerator and your reel-to-reel right there.
That's an Akai X 1800 SD reel-to-reel tape recorder, and in the picture it'd be on the right-hand side. There's a big 8-track, so I could record from 8-track to reel-to-reel. I could record from reel-to-reel to blank 8 tracks, or I could hook it up to a receiver and a turntable, and I could record either reel-to-reel or 8 tracks from a record. I still have that tape deck today. In fact, That's what I did. That's how I had about maybe 25 reel-to-reel tapes full of music from the 60s. And that's how I got it all onto CDs. And now they're in my 200 disc CD changer out in my workshop. So when I'm out there working on a saddle or something, I'm playing all this music from back in the 60s. And that thing still works.
Wow. What a treasure, and it's still working like that. That is so amazing.
God. Robbie, to my knowledge, the answer is no. I know that Shriver had a dog, but I don't know that he ever took it to the field. He may have. None that I've ever heard of, though.
As far as I know, there's been 2 recon teams early at a Contoom that used dogs. One was Bob Brown or something, and he was with Colorado, and he had a German Shepherd. It worked a few times, and they quickly realized that's not going to work on a recon team. And then someone else ended up taking one out at it may have been a later incarnation of Colorado, and that Paul Poole, I think, had somebody he took out, and dogs were just not going to work on recon teams.
Yeah, and on Hatchet Force, you didn't need them.
Yeah, I was about to say y'all would have no need for that. Oh wow, we've got some good questions coming in.
Good.
Yeah, y'all keep coming and bringing. We've got 50 people in here today already.
Jason, it's kind of funny because I read incessantly. In fact, I've got a book that I'm going to mail Bud. It's called The Secret War Against Hanoi. And this is a history of SOG from day one to day end. It's got all the names, all the command, all the different shit. Right now I'm reading, I just started last night a book called Run to the Sound of Guns. It's about a ranger. It's modern times, Iraq, Afghanistan. But in Vietnam, I read some books. I think mostly what I read back then was Westerns.
Louis L'Amour's.
I'm a cowboy at heart. I had horses for 50 years, and I've done the Civil War cavalry reenacting and cowboy mounted shooting, and horses were my life until my hips got replaced.
We've got to get some photos of you on your reenacting. I don't think anybody's ever seen how well in depth you go on your reenactments, and it's amazing. He's got photos of him on horses, and it's beautiful. Oh, you're gonna have to show that Rolex too today, sir.
No, this ain't a Rolex.
Oh, I thought I saw the bevel.
No, this is just my wife bought that for me for Christmas. It's probably, I think she spent about $125 on it.
Beautiful.
I never did have a Rolex. you know.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I had a
thought you were,
Seco. No, I
okay.
had a
Well,
Seco. But
can't-
I did have 2 star sapphire rings. One was silver and one was gold. Got to have
absolutely.
them. And they both got stolen when my house got burglarized, along with my war medallion. You know, what are you gonna do?
Oh,
I
my
know.
God.
Yeah, made me sick. Hatchet Force,
Jesus.
like, I'll tell you guys free move like that. You know, I don't know if any of the Hatchet Forces ever did take a prisoner. We tried. I don't know. Should I tell the story about why I wasn't allowed? Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So my MOS, I was trained as a weapons guy, shooting guns, you know, and I grew up with guns. But you go out there, whether it's a platoon or the company, you're going to come down off the hill that night and you're going to try to blow up a truck or catch some idiot walking along, bebopping along, and knock him out and take him prisoner. So not being trained as a demo guy, my idea was you take an empty C rations can or whatever, soda can, and I think soda can was my big mistake. Cut the top out of it, fill it with C4, and then put a little M26 toe popper in the top of it and arm it, and then you bury it in the ground, just put a light coat of dust over it. And the idea was that the truck would come along, run over it, and you see tire tracks on the trail, and these trucks would try to stay in the same tracks because they knew if the tracks are there, then there's no bomb because the last truck that went over it would have been blown up. So you put this soda can with the toe popper and the C4. The problem is me not knowing what I was doing. When the truck ran over it, it wouldn't just blow the tire off the truck. It'd blow up the whole damn truck and kill the driver. So they quit letting me be the one to set the explosives. You know, and I forgot where the question was going. I don't know if I answered it or not. This is part of my short-term
talking about
memory loss.
grabbing prisoners.
Yeah. So catching a prisoner was always a secondary thing. Because hell, you'd get, what was it, $100 or a couple $100 and a trip anywhere you wanted, like Taiwan or wherever,
Anywhere.
Bangkok. But we never took a prisoner. We were always going in exploiting something. Usually it was something the recon team had found that they couldn't handle. Like when I got shot the first time, we were going in on a truck park, which was too much for the recon team to try to deal with. So they send the company in and we dealt with it. And then we get our asses kicked, and we always knew that was part of it. Is we're going to go in and we're going to draw a large number of NVA towards us because they know there's a lot of us. And then we're going to work airstrikes and kill them all. And, so prisoners, a prisoner would have been nice, but hatchet forces just generally didn't get the opportunity because we made so much noise and there were so many of them looking for us, or they knew where we were at. You just didn't get the chance.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, and it was during a hectic one. I think maybe Bob Howard may have gotten one out during a hectic Hatchet Force operation when folks were injured, and he managed to snag one that was almost dying and get one back. But like you said, y'all weren't out there to capture prisoners.
Right.
Let's see. Oh, somebody asked about Mad Dog. I'll get to that, but we already know that.
How did you handle the adrenaline absence when you got back in the world? Oh, God. So I reported into Bragg to 7th Group on May 19th of 1970. And I got married on July 3rd, one of my first big mistakes. And 2 weeks after I got married, we didn't know exactly what they were doing, but Bull Simons was interviewing people for a special mission, and they were especially interested in guys that had combat experience, because not everybody in SF had combat experience. So I went to the interview, and it turned out that it was the interview to pick the guys that were going to do the Sante prison raid.
Oh.
And Bull told me, he said, you've only been married for 2 weeks, and as much as we'd like to take you, we don't think your mind would be on the job at hand. So I didn't get to go, and I've always regretted that. Always regretted that. Again, how do you do the lack of adrenaline? Daniel, let me give you some examples. So when I came back, I was an E6. Well, in Special Forces, your rank doesn't always dictate who's in charge. And that was mostly on recon teams more than anything else. But they had this deal down at Fort Bragg they called post support. And every month, varying units, not just Special Forces, but other units on base like 18th Airborne Corps or the 82nd Almost Airborne, they had to provide a certain number of people to do these post-support activities. So one of these post-support activities was, and this is where I got picked, driving a what we call a box truck today. I call them box trucks. Myself and a master sergeant. So here's an E6 and an E8, and for the whole month, I had to go get my military driver's license. And we spent our entire day, every day for a month, going to a warehouse, picking up furniture and delivering it to on-base housing. So that's a good use of the millions of dollars worth of training that me and this E8 had. The E8, he ended up getting to go on the Sante raid. But that's the kind of bullshit. So you're on this adrenaline high that hasn't come down yet, and you're doing stuff like this. And all I can say is it's no wonder that there was such an alcohol problem back in the States. We train and train and train for this stuff, and you become an adrenaline junkie, and now all of a sudden there's no adrenaline running anymore. What are you going to do? Well, what do? You drink. So I started drinking again after being cold turkey, and I started drinking quite a bit, and I finally forced myself to stop because our company, we had a company picnic, and there was an individual who I felt like on a particular mission in Vietnam that he had left not only me, but a number of us, he had left us for dead. And he ran. And that little 25 automatic you saw in my picture, I brought 2 of them home with me. And I had my mind made up that I was going to take him out. And a couple of guys stopped me, and then, I thought about it, and it's like, man, I got to quit this drinking, And then eventually I got diabetes, and I can't drink anymore anyway. So thank you, Agent Orange. But yeah, so the going from adrenaline to no adrenaline, the closest thing that I've come to it since then is like doing my Civil War reenacting. There's nothing like leading a company of cavalry in a charge, with guns and sabers and cannons and all that stuff. But that's the closest I've ever come to feeling it again. And, you know,
Wow.
it is what it is. Now, in today's world, my big thing is, you know, I was teaching my leatherworking class for the wounded soldiers down at Fort Leonard Wood, which is about a half hour from me here in Missouri. And I got that President's silver medal from the president for doing that. And that was a big thing. And it was kind of like an adrenaline rush. And today I teach leatherworking. I've got 2 students that are both disabled vets. And wow. That's why I don't have PTSD. You know, I do my thing, or I go out and get on the tractor and go out to my woods and work on fence or go deer hunting or whatever. You know, you got to keep yourself busy. And I've found over the years that is a key for not, well, there's a
developing
lot of
a routine. Developing a routine is key.
A meaningful routine. And there's a lot of guys out there that won't agree with me, but I don't really care. I know for me it works.
Absolutely.
So, and then last year I found out purely by accident that every year in September, 5th group, not just SOG, but 5th group has a reunion down at Fort Campbell. And so I made a couple of holsters, and I went down there and spent, let's see, 5 days. I spent 2 nights sitting up to midnight with the 5th group commander and one of the battalion command sergeant majors, because they wanted to know everything there was to know about SOG. You know, and finally you reach a point, guys, I'm 70 whatever years old I was. I got to get some sleep, because we're going to be doing this shit all over again tomorrow. Next day, same thing. The colonel's like, come on, let's talk. You know, I'm going down there this year in September, and of course I'm donating some more holsters and stuff. And I think we're going to do one of these sit downs with today's guys, which I think will be, and some of the stuff that I showed you, Chris McCollum doesn't know it, but if I can get a guarantee that the stuff will be put on display and not just put in a storeroom somewhere, I'm going to donate the stuff to the Hall of Heroes down there.
Excuse me. The guys I got to meet the current 5th group leadership at SOAR, and boy, are they young, but they have got some kind of experience and they are some hardcore Green Berets.
Colonel Lindemann, the group commander, Colonel Lindemann, you wouldn't believe he's 46 years old.
He looks 30 years old.
I was sitting at a table bullshitting with the 4th Battalion Command Sergeant Major, and this little guy comes and sits down next to me, and he wants to hear stories, and he's asking me all these questions. And I made a joke, and I said to the sergeant major, I said, you let your driver come in here too? And he said, he's not my driver, he's the group commander. And I said, well, you know, what the hell, you got to have fun. I didn't know, because nobody had introduced me. Chris McCollum had not introduced me to the group commander yet. And then when they did the dedication of the display that they made, that Rob Graham and them made, of the SOG display in the Hall of Heroes, the colonel was standing next to me, and he asked me to talk about what was a prairie fire emergency. Because people were asking him, what is a prairie fire emergency? So I got, you know, obviously it doesn't bother me to talk.
And, you know, and they could have no better person to get to talk to about SOG stuff than you. I'm glad that you and Mr. Vern are making an effort to make sure the 5th group has their stuff all together history-wise. See, that was another thing about the reunion. I hadn't seen Vern since the day I got shot the first time. Wow.
March of '69, and we hooked up on your Facebook page, and I mentioned that I was going to Campbell, and he said, I'll be there on Wednesday. And I said, well, I'll be there on Tuesday. Well, I'm sitting at the table talking to some of the modern day guys, and kind of like holding court, you know, and because they made me feel like a celebrity or something. I just can't describe the feeling.
You are, sir. You
and, I see this guy and his wife walk in the room to the registration thing and get their name tags. Well, they're clear across the room, and I'm half blind anyway. And I knew immediately it's Vern.
It's Vern.
And he walked right over to me. He recognized me, and I don't think I look anything like I did back then. But we recognized each. It's just that brotherhood that it's like no other kind of brotherhood. I had to buy a new. I was going to buy a new truck last fall when I got back from. Well, I ordered it prior. Well, it turns out that the general manager at this dealership that I said I would never do business with was in fifth group. And all of a sudden, everything just pulled together, and now we're like best buddies, you know. It truly is. My wife is just amazed. She said her company down at Fort Leonard Wood is trying to buy a bunch of new trucks. And they do all the maintenance on base and all that stuff. And they had a problem trying to get certified as a fleet. And so they ordered some trucks last fall, and they never got certified as a fleet. Well, General Motors won't make the trucks because they want the basic half-ton, no extended cab, not just a real basic trucks. They'll only make them if you're a fleet. So I talked to my buddy. I found out that was the problem. Well, now they've been certified as a fleet. She's like, I cannot believe you pulled this shit off. And
magic maker.
Well, to me, the lesson here for all of us that were in SOG is the things that we learned and the things that we did. You know, you learn, don't sweat the small stuff, number one, because there's much bigger shit out there to sweat. And number two, it lets you you learned how to make decisions on the fly without having to sit and analyze it and think about it. And you get shit done. When I was at the telephone company, I was the go-to guy to get shit done. When nobody else could get it done, they'd come to me. And, you know, it's just, I think a lot of us have that same set of values or whatever it is, you know, whatever. None of us ever got into SOG thinking that we're going to win the Medal of Honor or become some kind of hero. That's not why we did it, you know. So whatever happened came with the territory, but it's not because we planned it out. Okay, you got any more questions there, bud?
Yeah, I was about to say it's crazy. We're at 45 viewers, still at 210.
Holy shit.
2 hours and 10 minutes. Yeah, we've got one more. I told guys to get some in, but this looks like the last one we've got for a minute.
Okay. Did you ever go out with Mad Dog? No. I only heard stories about him. He was at CCS, and I was at CCC. So different camps. We heard stories about him when he went, I guess we call it when he went missing. The story we heard, because there was a $10,000 price on his head. Mm-hmm. And the story that we heard was that the reports were that they were parading his head on a pole around to show what happens to SOG guys. Was that ever proven? I've never seen anything to indicate that it was proven. The interesting thing is that when he went into the woods with a couple of his yards, there were no gunshots heard. So what the hell? What happened? You know, it's one of those things that we're never going to know.
The new book out, I hope will be a great service, getting some of these wild stories, because some of these stories are just complete BS. I've recently made contact with Dave Maurer, who was as close as you could get to Jerry considering how he was. But he would ask Jerry when he'd go up to CCN, because he was at CCS and Khartoum before it was all encompassed to CCS, all of that. But so he'd travel, and he had just survived an assassination attempt and went to CCN to hide out and see some of his buddies. And Dave told me that, you know, a lot of the stories are BS about him carrying, you know, 30 guns on him and all that. All of that's BS. He would go out loaded for bear, but hell, on some Hatchet Force missions, guys would tell him that, you know, you need to bring a weapon. And he's like, I've got a pistol with me. He's like, no, you need a weapon. He's like, I'm running the show. I've got stuff to take care of. And if I have to start shooting, we're in bad business. So he actually on occasion would carry a 38 pistol out with him, if you can believe that. I've got
the same pistol I carried, the Smith & Wesson M&P.
Yes, sir.
What
Absolutely.
the hell good is a 6-shot revolver going to do you in a firefight, right?
That's crazy. That's Mad Dog.
But see, this is where I was saying earlier, becoming an adrenaline junkie works against you. You know, sometimes you do things you shouldn't do.
And that was one. And he, I like to believe, because the air power came in at the very end of when he went missing, and the guys saw him hit, crumple to the bottom, crawl to a crater with his men, and they thought he was dying right then. But I feel sure will never find him, and the Vietnamese did not get him, or the NVA, because they immediately bombed the entire area. So I don't think they got him, and I don't think we'll ever find Jerry, sadly.
No.
We've got a few more questions for you before we close it up, and we are going to have you and Gamble back. Gamble's been messaging me all this time, and we will have you back on solo and with Gamble. But here's
for the guys that don't know, so the idea is Gamble was at CCS.
CCN.
Gamble was at CCN, and I was at CCC. We were both Hatchet Force. And the idea is to talk about a lot of the differences between whether it be the loadout, the air support, the terrain, but to try to talk about as many of the differences between the two places as we can. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, sir. I've honestly, I don't think it's ever been done, and I think that's gonna be extremely, extremely interesting. We've got 2 more questions, and we'll close it out after we do a little house cleaning at the end.
My bladder says thank you. Was everyone given morphine, or was there one central person? Okay, I mentioned this earlier, GS, you were probably sleeping. Every American on the Hatchet Force anyway, and it could have varied with recon teams, because there was no big rule. But in the Hatchet Force, every one of us in our right-hand chest pocket carried 3 syrettes of morphine. And by all of us carrying it in the same pocket, if you were wounded or injured, whatever, we always knew where to go to get the morphine. We didn't have to search all your different pockets. So we always carried it. Plus, our medic always carried additional morphine. You know, in a combat environment, morphine was not so closely monitored like it is today. And
that's another thing to add on to that. You guys remember, it's not like the Hatchet Forces to where they would have a chase medic when things went wrong on the bright light or anything like that.
Yep.
The Hatchet Forces had designated medics that were out there, much like Gary Rose, who earned the Medal of Honor. So these guys didn't really have to have medical kit on them except for their personal syrettes, because they had medics on the operation with them.
Mainly we carried like a bandage, like on the web gear, and then a lot of us carried a tube. You can see it in one of my pictures. You can barely see it, a container of serum albumin. If they had to do IVs and you had a lot of casualties, you go through that stuff pretty quick. But yes, we all carried morphine. Oh, buddy. I'll tell you, it took me about 10 minutes sitting there looking at that bullet in my ankle to get up the nerve to shoot myself with the morphine syringe. But once I did, that's why we have all those pictures of the guy that shot me in that, is because I wasn't feeling no pain, you know.
That was what was funny, because I was reading something to where you had gotten your first shot, and then when you got back, you got another, and then they said thankfully he had his morphine, because we got all these quality shots in the Joe Barnard book from that, and I was like,
Yeah.
thank goodness you had your morphine.
Yep. Yeah.
All right, guys. Mr. Terry has given us 2 hours and 15 minutes. This is the longest one we've done with Mr. Terry. Everybody's saying thank you, Terry. Terry's going to be a continual guest. We're going to keep having him on, and hopefully the next one I'm going to touch base with Dick to Gamble today and see about lining us up for maybe next week, if you're be open to trying again.
Let's see. I'm good every day next week except Thursday, because I'm having another spinal cord surgery.
Oh God, sir.
Well, this will be number 41 major surgeries. They put this damn spinal cord stimulator in, and it's failed. The first 2 times it failed, and then this time it's not doing me a bit of good. So why keep it in? Once they take it out, they can do X-rays in my MRI on my lower back, and maybe find out what's really going on. I mean, we know 2 broken backs, but let's see what's really going on. Unfortunately, the VA pain management doctors, all they want to do is give you shots and stick you with needles and shit. And
I will never forgive the VA for how they treated my father. And everybody's letting you say thank you and all of that. You've quickly become the favorite out of everyone we've had so far. So
I honestly, even though it may not seem like it, because I'll just talk on and on and on and on, I really am very flattered and very humbled by this whole thing, because and Bud and I have talked offline quite a bit. The whole purpose is we want you guys to ask a lot of questions, and that, to me, that gives you a lot better understanding of some. I mean, I can talk on and on and on and on, and there's a lot of stories that I could still tell, and we'll try to make some of it. We want it to be interesting, but at the same time informative. So that's kind of the goal.
It's and everyone keeps saying we could sit here and listen to you go on all day. That's what we're here for. So
the problem is my bladder wouldn't agree with it.
It's fine, and we're gonna get Terry to where he can go relieve himself. Mr. Terry, thank you, and I will be in touch with you today when me and Gamble hook up.
Okay, thank you all guys for joining in.
Yes, sir. You have a good day, and I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Bye bye. All righty, guys. How about that? I think this could be the most amazing start to a show with that show and tell. I mean, how insane was that? I'm definitely gonna have to get some screen grabs and clips put up to share for those of the people that didn't get to catch it live and all of that. Man, we had 50 folks in here at the start. It is when it got high. We started with 7 because I didn't get any information out. Luckily, Jason just blew it up out of the water. It's amazing. Brother, I'm going to do a special Mad Dog show because I did one with modern military history, and I'm not proud of it because I've recently learned a lot more about Jerry, even before the book comes out, which will help a lot. I'm going to do a Jerry show because I've gotten a lot of good information, and a lot of the stuff in the plaster books about him loaded up with 8 guns and 4 knives and all of that's garbage. I mean, he was antisocial, but not to the near extent that people peg him as. So we're gonna I'm gonna do a special Mad Dog show before the book is released. But let me get on the phone with Gamble and go ahead and see if we can get this bad boy lined up for next week. having 2 Hatchet Force men on, which will be a first. I'm glad there were no freezing issues. Mine was freezing up. That's why I was making sure all of y'all could see it. It wasn't freezing up on y'all's end as well. Yeah, brother, there's not a lot on him. The new book, I'll keep y'all abreast when it's going to come out. But when I do a show, I'll really get some stuff out there that'll be out that is not going to be out except for in the book. And some of it might not even be in the book because some of his friends didn't participate. We'll do a Dick Meadows show also because I'm actually acquainted with Leonard Tilley, the Distinguished Service Cross. He earned with Jason can help me out. Sisler, George Ken Sisler, or I'm blanking, but he earned the DSC, and he served a little bit with Dick Meadows, so I'm going to have him on also. Or I'm going to try and have him on, but I'll be using some of my notes from his interview to talk about. Yeah, Ken Sisler. Thank you, Jason. And hell, I may have Jason come on and help me with that. But tomorrow we've got James Stetchgall from Dead A coming on at 10 o'clock in the morning. Thursday we have Dave Hall, Navy SEAL, SEAL Team 2, SEAL Team 8. He was trained by Vietnam veteran SEALs, Bo Burwell, Dick Marcinko, all the big name Vietnam guys. Going to be a great Wednesday and Thursday show. Friday, I'm not sure what's going on. Friday, Sunday, Jason Economos will be on to talk gentle propositions and the new book coming out. So we've got a big week, a big next week, and I made contact with Colonel Andy Finlinson. God, I'm getting cotton mouth. He is going to come on probably the first of Andy. I'll talk to him Saturday for a test run, and it looks like next week we're going to have Lieutenant Colonel Andy Finlinson on. I've still got Rabbi, I've got Andy Finlinson, and I've got two corpsmen lined up right now. So July is going to be a lot of Force Recon guys. Oh, yes, brother, and I was going to clown on when I went to solo screen, that's when I smoked, so y'all don't see me. But I was going to show Terry, since he's talking about my black and milds, I found a photo of Terry smoking his black and mild after a mission. I was going to put that up and forgot it. But, yeah, I had my black and mild, but I'm not going to be smoking on air and ruin the show. I've learned that lesson. So, luckily, I got that little solo layout for sneaking. Yes, Mr. Leonard Tilley. I'm going to try and get Al Keller on, who was around there, who served with Ted Braden, who might be D.B. Cooper. And I'm also going to have Drew Hurst Beeson on, who is a huge D.B. Cooper investigator and a huge Zodiac investigator. And we will be having him. Yep, I was sneaking it. We're going to have him on next week or next weekend talking exclusive Ted Braden and the D.B. Cooper connection. So I'm super excited about that. And as soon as I can get done with William Walters, we're going to have William Walter on to talk about Vietnam gunships and then the modern day Special Forces Spectre and Spookies that worked with him through El Salvador, Grenada, Panama into Iraq. Oh yeah, we're gonna go deep on DB Cooper. We've got some, Paratrooper of Fortune. Go grab that book. I'm about finished with it. And we're gonna have Ben Milligan from the Jocko podcast and the Team House podcast. I've got to touch base with him tomorrow or the next day, and he's going to be coming on to talk about his book. Is it Beneath? Gosh, I'm ruining it. Water Beneath the waves, or Waves Beneath the Boat, or something. It's the definitive SEAL team history. So we're going to end up having him on. Which is going to be great. So we're going to have a modern day SEAL on, or two modern day SEALs on, but one of them is going to be it's by Water Beneath the Walls, the rise of the Navy SEAls. So it's going to be crazy. We're going to have a great show between veterans coming on and some authors and stuff like that. So y'all bear with me. I'll keep y'all updated. We've got a very exciting week. Me and Jason are going to try at least once a week or once every week and a half do an update show like we did, to where y'all can ask us questions, maybe get some ideas for guests, some stuff we need to improve on. And we're going to really take it from there. And if y'all want to, I'm a huge Tour of Duty fan, and I'm in a group with all of the actors, and to where I've got access to all 3 seasons. And I've started to consider doing Tour of Duty, the last 2 seasons, SOG seasons, watch parties. If y'all would be interested in that, let me know, because I as y'all know, I'm a Tour of Duty junkie. So just let me know. But we've got some big stuff going on in the future here in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So y'all just bear with me. Thank y'all so much. We've at 1,001 or 2 subscribers. That's amazing. And we're knocking it out of the park, guys. Knocking it out of the park. So thank y'all. Y'all have a good day. I'll probably update y'all on the old Instagram live whenever I talk to Gamble and back to Terry. And I'll be putting out show information with Jason about James Stetchkall tomorrow. So we're going to do that. Love Tour of Duty. Have 2 seasons on hard drive. I was going to buy them, and I will, because this website will end up going down, but I'm going to buy all 3 seasons. I love that show. Bud, how old are you? Yes, I was born in 1990. I'm 30. Hell, what am I? 32 now? I can't even keep up with my birthday. Yeah, my dad was a Marine grunt with Lima 3-5, and I was my grandfather stormed the beaches of Normandy, got captured at the Battle of the Bulge, and escaped and killed the 2 Germans. 1010 killed the 2 Germans that had him, and found his way back to the lines. And that was when he earned his first Silver Star. He is one of the hardest men I ever knew in my life. Only time I ever saw him cry was in a photo or a video of when he held me for the first time. Only time I've ever seen him cry. He was a damn good man. I miss both of them a lot. Almost started crying thinking about that. Let me get off here before I ruin Terry's stream. I'll be in touch with you guys today. You guys, I love it. I can't wait till the channel keeps growing. 1,010. It's Daniel. It's amazing. You're off duty. Went back to be free. Thanks. It's time to rewatch. Great family history you have. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. I'm just trying to get all of our veterans the due diligence and the respect. And as you see, Terry, how much he appreciates all of you. You know, they don't think they're that important. And clearly y'all showing them how important they are means quite a lot to them. So I wasn't going to do this today because I wanted to do Terry and Gamble, but Terry was so excited, and I knew what he was going with the show and tell was just going to be too good to pass up. So we needed to get him on today. So I'll update y'all in a few hours. Y'all be good, and be ready for tomorrow morning. We're going to have a hell of a show. He was. Thank you, Otto. He was. Y'all be ready, because we have got a amazing Wednesday and Thursday coming up. See y'all.